Jesus. Man, this is so I just happened to pop it because somebody had mentioned something about the Dune Awakening because of the patch, the developer update this morning. This is a literal comment from somebody on their Discord. Listen up, devs. Your bonehead obsession with forcing PvP down our throats is tanking this game harder than a lead balloon. I'm done with your half-baked dumpster fire decisions. Your deep desert is a steaming pile of nonsense, and your PvP vision is a middle finger to everyone who actually plays. Stop ignoring the community's screams for what we want. You're driving this game off a cliff. Either fix it or sell it to developers who aren't allergic to basic competence. Do better or just give it up already. Oh my god. Dude. Uh... Tell us you live in your mom's basement without telling us you live in your mom's basement. Heinrich says, getting this game on my birthday next month. Nice. I didn't know the orange one played Dune. Oh my god.
Now displaying your current quarter grade.
Increased MP ammo firing rate. Oh, because my combat went up to 20. Nice.
I'm glad we could confirm that Higgs was involved. Though I still don't understand how he escaped the beach. The Ghost Mech forces are definitely under his control. And Higgs is determined to spread weapons to every corner of Australia. The information we retrieved from the device you brought back to us only serves to confirm this. We now know for a fact that the weapons spinning up in this region can all be traced back to that factory. But that's not all we've determined. We've also learned about a new type of fabricator, one that wasn't present at the weapons factory.
Okay.
It's not clear where they're being used or what they're producing, but this likely means there may be another factory out there. We'll look into it.
Great work, Sam. That factory won't be capable of producing weapons ever again. The Motherhood should rest a little bit easier with that knowledge. Higgs remains a concern, however. It is indeed possible he has another factory elsewhere in the continent. It seems we'll need to proceed with greater caution in the days and weeks ahead. Upgrading the Magellan may also be worth considering. As for you, Sam, you need only to continue expanding the network.
For now, Sam, you should return to your private room and get some rest. You made a real difference today.
Well, I'll tell you what's really entitled Gamer Tombs. So, without delving into the whole stop killing games thing, I made a topic discussion post yesterday. I don't want to dive too deep in the rabbit hole, but one of the things that came out of that discussion last night was someone said one of the core aspects of an online game should always remain open to players, even if the developers decide to sunset the game. What no one is talking about, and this is the entitled gamer thing coming to the forefront, what no one is talking about is who pays for the costs once a game is no longer being operated by the developer. So there are server costs, there are infrastructure costs, there are ongoing, assuming the IP holder wants to continue licensing the IP for active development use. Who is paying all of the money for the server infrastructure, the hosting costs, the back end, not only the maintenance, the people who are required to remain on staff to ensure that the live service game continues to be operated as a live service. Who continues to pay for all of that stuff? And that's something that no one seems to be wanting to have a conversation. They just say, I want my thing forever, without understanding that live service products are designed to have a functioning backbone that is paid for by someone. And if that someone is no longer around, who is paying for that backbone, let alone the licensing and all the other stuff? Tariffs will pay for it. Um, I just entitled gamer syndrome is probably one of the worst modern diseases out there. For sure. Someone tried to tell me yesterday that and this just shows the ignorance of people who don't understand copyright and trademark law. I guess I was already on this ship. Someone said, when I buy, this is literally what they said, when I buy a toaster, I can make toast forever using that toaster. And when I buy a video game, I should be able to do whatever I want with that video game forever because I own it and it's mine. And if I want to use that video game to be able to do other things based on that video game, if the company's unwilling to do so, then I should have the right to do so. And I just was like face palming the whole time. Like, the fact that you're trying to compare an inanimate toaster with the complexities of intellectual property and its derivatives shows that you have an absolute fundamental lack of intelligence on the subject at hand. Like, you are not even just ignorant, lack of knowledge, you were ignorant to the point of stupid by thinking that, oh, I own a toaster, I could make toast forever. Yes, you can, but the moment you start taking that toast and trying to sell that toast, that's when complexity, like, you can't, like, a toaster is not the same thing as a book, right? A toaster is a patented object used in the production of food. A book is a piece of intellectual property
Break time.
that has
arguments
copyrights
here.
associated with it, and those copyrights have lifespans, they have terms and conditions. Then there are derivative rights for film products, and it's like, y'all are just stupid. That's what it comes down to. Oh yeah, transcend. Yeah. There's no understanding at all of the fundamental licensing and complexities of running a live service operation. Things like, I don't know.
She's at it again?
So like this game runs is it the Decima engine? I think is what it's called.
Wait,
I'm looking this up.
looks
Yeah,
like
the
clear
Decima engine.
skies.
Let me get through the cutscene.
Let the sun shine tomorrow. It's a Japanese game to predict the weather. I learned it as a kid. This is rainy, cloudy, and sunny. A charm to ward off evil spirits. To help keep tomorrow safe. Hope it's right.
Doesn't it always rain whenever you go outside, though?
Yes. But deep down in my heart, it's really sunny. Always.
Okay, your turn.
Okay. Let's do this. 明日天気になれ。
There. Now it'll be sunny.
Bye, Sam.
What?
Whatever. All right. I think I'm safe to continue on the conversation. So, Death Stranding 2 is using the Decima engine, right? Um, Now this is a single player game, so it's a little different. Well, let's assume for a minute that Death Stranding 2 is an online MMO using the Decima engine, and they're licensed to use the Decima engine for this game. But then they decide that they're going to end production of this game. Or let's say that Decima sells and Decima no longer exists anymore. Whoever buys Decima, if someone buys it, has the legal right to say, well, your product is using an old version of our product. Like, your product is using an old version of this thing that's no longer in existence. Um, you're not allowed to do anything beyond what you already have. So, if they wanted to continue to produce future content, if the license is up, they would have to move to a new engine. More than likely, what would happen is they would develop a new product. EverQuest 1 becomes EverQuest 2, becomes EverQuest 3, because all the licenses associated with that thing. I don't know if you guys know what SpeedTree is. SpeedTree is a tool that is used in many movies and video games to create trees. When you use SpeedTree to put items into your project, you are licensing the use of those trees. You're licensing the use of SpeedTree for that specific project, for that specific use. You can't do anything with the trees in that game beyond the use of that game. And once the game is done, the license cannot be extended, cannot be replicated, so on and so forth. So it's only good for that time. So if you try to then take that game, backwards engineer it, and then publish that because you want access to it forever, you are now breaking copyright law and licensing law related to SpeedTree assets, which were only licensed for use in that specific instance of a live service product. If that live service product is no longer in existence and you're making something over here that is not part of the original licensed product, you are breaking copyright law and you are breaking the legal licensing restrictions related to the SpeedTree assets used in that project. And that's the thing that a lot of people are, they're like, but that's not what the Stop Killing Games movement is really about. It's about forcing these companies to stop taking games offline. I understand it. I do understand it. But what you're not understanding is the complexities of all of these assets that are used and the back end. Like, every time you load up an MMO, you're probably going to see 10 or 15 logos at the beginning, and those are all of the licenses that the company has paid for to make the Quixel art, SpeedTree, the name of the engine, whether it's Unity, Unreal, Decima, etc. All of those are licenses that have a specific period of use and a specific example. Someone tried to say yesterday in my video that if Dune Awakening were to go offline, I'm gonna go read the comment. Now that you guys got me on the topic, I can't get off the topic until I get this out of my system. I gotta go find this comment. I gotta go find this comment. Um, I can't. I can't move on, man. Let's see. We gotta go to comments, published, sort by. You know what? It would be better just to go to the video and check the comments there. Companies can make their own engines, yes. Uh, Here it is. Regarding the Dune example, nothing would change for the owning player in regards to licensing. They would still. So this is assuming Dune. Let's say Dune Awakening goes offline in 10 years. This person says nothing would change for the owning player in regards to licensing. They would still have the same client they already paid for. They would simply have to host and connect to their own local server. Hang on, we're not done yet. This is what the actual goal of the Stop Killing Gays movement is, at least from what I understand from the wording on the site. They aren't requesting or expecting licensing or IP rights to change. They simply want the company to provide some kind of creative connectivity solution at the conclusion of a hosting lifecycle, as that's all. But that's the thing. There is a fundamental misunderstanding about copyright law at the back core of Stop Killing Games. So this again, I'm reading this verbatim. The players, nothing would change for the players. They already have the same client. They simply have to host and connect to their own local server. But you're misunderstanding the fact that the licensing for the Dune IP, the licensing to host Dune Awakening, is tied to Funcom and Legendary. If Funcom and Legendary no longer have the rights, assuming in 10 years the rights revert back to Herbert Enterprises, it is illegal, fundamentally illegal, for a individual owner to host and have their own local server. This is why emulator servers consistently get legal takedown notices from active IP holders. I'm not saying like you can. There are a lot of cases where dead games continue to exist. Star Wars Galaxies has a ton of like active emulators out there that don't get hit with takedown notices, whereas Blizzard actively goes after emulator servers for World of Warcraft because they continue to manage and operate their own live version of World of Warcraft. So the reason that those get hit with takedown notices is because there are rights associated with the intellectual property. And just because your favorite online game went offline doesn't give you the right to continue to use it, even hosting it on your personal servers. It's not how that works. Legal copyright rights, the international property laws, international intellectual property laws, prohibit the use of something beyond the actual rights that were sold. So you wanting to host it on your own after it's offline is illegal. It's fundamentally illegal. And that's the crux of this is like in a perfect world, yes, it would be great to be able to take every game we've ever played and have those in perpetuity, but that's not how copyright law works. That's not how intellectual property law works. Um, and so it has nothing to do with whether the movement itself isn't expecting IP rights to change. It's that they're not understanding that the laws are in place for a reason, because even though you might be an innocent person who just wants to host your game in perpetuity, for every innocent person out there who just wants to keep playing the game, there are 100 people who want to take that product and monetize it. And that's where you get into the protection of copyrights, the protection of trademarks, the protection of patents, the protections of intellectual property law. Um, Correct, Transcend. It's about they're not understanding ownership versus leasing, because all you're doing is releasing these games. Even Steam, read the terms of service on Steam. You don't own any of the games you have on Steam. You don't own any of those games. You lease them from Steam. GOG, you actually own them. But with
Sam,
Steam, you're just leasing
the
them.
neck injury you suffered during your altercation with Higgs appears to have healed. You know, I've been thinking about what he said at West Fort Knot. He claimed that extinction wasn't his creed, that he wanted to build a world where fear and violence are king. I can only assume that at present he lacks the means to set the last Stranding in motion. So instead, he settled for trying to pit people against one another so they can tear the world apart for him. The weapons factory was just a means to that end. All the more reason why we need to rely upon the rope that is the chiral network to bring the whole continent together. That's not all he said, of course. He wanted to get under your skin with those comments about Loom. To get his revenge by inflicting as much pain and suffering as possible on the undying repatriate. Personally, I think you should try to put it out of your mind. Focus on finishing this journey, and in doing so, finding the closure you need. That's one of the reasons we took to the road, after all. That and finishing the network to bring forth a new playgate. Let's carry on, Sam. One step at a time.
One step at a
Sam,
time.
Charlie here. Another assignment has been registered in the system. You can pick up this main order by accessing the Motherhood's delivery terminal.
Miller X had asked a question about can't companies make their own engines such as Blizzard on World of Warcraft? Yes, but here's the thing. What happens if World of Warcraft decides that they no longer want to do... Let's say that Blizzard decides that they no longer want to host World of Warcraft, and they're going to take that game offline. If you do not have the rights to use their game engine, as in you have not purchased the rights to use their game engine, you cannot legally host World of Warcraft on a private server or otherwise because you don't own the rights to the engine. If you don't own the rights to something, you don't get to use it for personal use or otherwise. That would be like me saying, well, guys, that McDonald's restaurant over there closed, but they left all the equipment and the logo's still there. I'm going to go take over that building and I'm going to make McDonald's food for myself for the rest of my life. I'm not selling it to anybody. I'm not harming anybody. It's just for me. No, bitch, that's not how that works. McDonald's is a licensed trademark. They have copyrights and patents. Only they are allowed to use that stuff for personal benefit, whether it's monetary or otherwise. You don't get to just take over something because you want to. Like, there are rules and regulations on an international level that govern this kind of stuff. I think it's an interesting concept, the movement, but they are facing a really massive uphill battle because of like centuries. We have centuries worth of intellectual property and copyright law that continue to evolve, but you're not going to overthrow it just because you want personal ownership of something. You know, it's not how this works. Blizzard can absolutely sue him, Miller X, and they have gone after people for doing that kind of stuff. The question is it worth it from a monetary standpoint for them to go after every single instance of that? And that's the key. Just because they're not going after every single person doesn't mean that that person has the right to do it. It means that that person is doing something that they haven't gotten in trouble for yet. That's like saying, well, this guy over here, I've seen him speeding. He never obeys the speed limit. He's always driving 70 miles an hour when the speed limit sign is 50. He's always speeding. And it's like, yeah, and eventually he will get caught and he will get a ticket. Like, you can't expect to do things that are against the law and not get caught. The question is, have they caught him yet? Is he flying under the radar? The cost of taking someone to court is expensive. So if I'm a company and I see one dude with 80,000 followers on his YouTube channel, it's going to cost me at least probably 20,000 to 50,000, depends on the cost of my lawyers and everything else, but the amount of money that it's going to cost to take that person to court. I have to look at that person and say, does that person have enough money to justify me taking them to court? That's often a factor, is like, if that person is only worth $5,000, then I'm not, whatever. It's like an ant. They're not worth my notice. They're so small, they're so insignificant in the scope that the damage they're doing to our intellectual property is so insignificant that we aren't worried about that. But when you start talking private servers that are hosted with 3,000 players, now we're talking damages, because 3,000 players who could otherwise be paying an active subscription to World of Warcraft, well, now we're talking $15 a month of revenue for every player. Suddenly we're talking $50,000 a month. Right, did I do the math on that right? Make sure I'm going to pull my math calculator up. $15 a month times 3,000 players, $45,000 a month. So now we're talking $45,000 a month in lost revenue, right? That is worth pursuing, because now you're talking. So one dude who has his own private server and he's just leveling up by himself, he's not worth it. Private server hosting 3,000 players, that's worth pursuing in court, because we're losing revenue on that, because that person is robbing our subscriptions. It doesn't matter that they're not charging money. This is why this is where a lot of people don't understand copyright law and intellectual property law. So I have to protect my copyrights. I have to protect my patent. So if I have a patent, if I have a copyright, if I have a trademark, I am required by law to defend my trademark. This is why you'll see, like, it's been 8 or 10 years ago now. King's Games owned the copyright to Candy Crush Saga and etc. They had a trademark on the word saga related to video games because of Candy Crush Saga. So they, in order to prove to the trademark court that they were defending their copyrights and trademarks, they were aggressively pursuing other video game companies that had the word saga in their title, such as the Banner Saga. The Banner Saga had to go to court with King's Game over the use of the word saga in their title, because of the fact that it was being used in a video game setting. And this is where the average gamer doesn't have a clue about trademark and copyright, because they're not paying attention to these types of legal battles that are going on. They don't understand copyrights and all that stuff. It's a mess, man. It's a mess. But that's why you don't see Blizzard going after the one dude on a private server, but they will go after and issue takedown notices for private servers that host thousands of players. Because even though those private servers aren't charging money, it's the fact that they are taking those subscribers away from World of Warcraft, which means they are actively impacting and damaging the business. Therefore, that's worth a lawsuit. $50,000 a month in lost revenue, that's damages. And you can prove those damages in court, because those would be subscribers to our live service product. But you're taking our subscribers and you're pushing them somewhere else by offering them a free derivative of our product. No, 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 no. No, we can't allow that. And you'll see some players be like, that's evil corporate capitalism. I should have free stuff. No, trust me, you don't want those things to be violated. Do the rights ever expire? No. That's the thing with rights. Um, Generally speaking, I say generally speaking, a good example of rights expiring would be like Star Wars Galaxies. Those rights expired. Disney doesn't care about Star Wars Galaxies. They don't care about the engine that was run on. They just don't care about it. It's such a small community, they don't care. So the rights to that expired, and no one cares about it. It's off. It's off doing its own thing. Vanguard Saga of Heroes is another example of an engine and an intellectual property where the rights are just out there in the wind and the owners don't care, because there's such a it's such a tiny community that it's not worth going after anybody for running those emulators. But generally speaking, if there is active use of an engine, those rights are still very much in effect. It's only when we talked about MySpace yesterday. I think in that video, if you ever think about MySpace, like MySpace is no longer around anymore. Do people still have are MySpace pages still in existence, or is the hosting completely gone?